So can you tell me a bit more about Fime?
So Fime is a leader in testing payment solutions. We provide consulting, trainings, test tools and certification services. And as a trusted implementation partner, we accompany our customer from the beginning of their project to the end. Our headquarters is based in Paris area and we are located all over the world. For many years now, Fime has worked with the financial services ecosystem. We have tracked and been part of its evolution, and it's now clear that this industry is going through a period of unprecedented change. Change is good, but it's never easy, and there are many challenges that banks must address to keep their central role inside this new fintech world.
So Christian, can you tell me, how is the banking ecosystem changing at the moment?
In fact, it's not just about the banking ecosystem. We are all entering in a new world driven by data. And it's even more true for banks. In fact, they can leverage a huge amount of data they are managing every day to think about improving their existing services, but also think about new valuable services, like any internet player are doing right now. But it's not just about defining how to use them, it's also how to protect them. So it's about security. And banks need constantly to improve the way they protect those data and how to ensure data privacy to their customers. That's key today for a bank. That's for the data. But to better work with other companies, with fintechs and so on, they need to share and exchange those data with third parties. And that's why banks need to adopt the open banking approach, which means that they need to open their system to third parties to better collaborate in order to increase the kind of services, valuable services they can propose, but also to improve the quality for customers. That's one thing. And a part of the data, it's also about new usage. The usage are moving, are changing today. We both know that no one likes to pay. We want to shop. And that's a key change that we see on the market today is to make the payment less feasible for the end user. We've seen many initiatives, for instance, Amazon Go in the US, you enter the shop, you get your goods, you leave the shop and you receive a payment notification. So it's very nice for the end user. We have Uber as well, who have worked on making the payment disappear from the taxi, which is nice for anyone, because you have less issue, I would say. And this is the same for banks. They need to think new ways of proposing valuable services and payment services to end user based on mobile, for instance. And that's the digital transformation, leveraging on data on the mobile. That's a key trend for bank. And the last change, I would say it's less fun, I would say, the regulation. How the regulation will adapt to those changes. And today on the market in Europe, we have two main changes in the regulation, GDPR and PSD2. GDPR for data protection and data privacy, and PSD2 that improves the security on the mobile or online, and also open the doors to fintechs and startups to leverage on banks' data to propose more services to end users.
So what are the key challenges facing the banks and how can they overcome them?
It's quite often the same with banks. One of the key challenges for banks is to change. And the change that we discussed before are strongly impacting the banks. And as a big organization, it's difficult to quickly adapt to those changes. So there is two kinds of transformation for banks. The short-term transformation, adapt and comply with the current regulation, and also adapt their services to new kinds of services like mobile services. So for the first one, for the regulation, it's about deploying systems that are more secure, deploying strong authentication for any transaction online or on the mobile. And it's also about opening new standardized API for any third parties that would like to have access to banks information or to aggregate data for customers or to initiate payment directly with banks. And for banks, this is a big stakes because they are not used to share this kind of data with other people because usually it's centralized. With PSD2, it's really thinking about how to work together to improve services and the value proposition for customers. So that's for the short-term evolution for banks. For the short-term evolution on mobile, it's also important to think about adapting the services to the mobile. Not just take the same existing services and put it on the mobile, not like this. They need to think about adapting the customer journey to propose more connectivity, real-time transaction, to match with the customers' needs that have evolved since 10 years, I would say. And if they don't do that, banks take the risk to be pushed out of the picture by giant internet players or merchants that want to control the relationship and the customer journey of their customer within their shops and so on. So it's really key for banks to transform their organization to match those needs. That's for the short-term evolution. For the long-term one, in fact, it's linked to open banking, it's linked to big data. And to do so, they need to think about, okay, I need to adapt my system, my organization, my processes. But how can I do that? By keeping in mind that my system should also be sustainable in time. I mean, how to build a system that will be future-proof for what will come in 10 years. And that's a big challenge for banks. I have a budget to modify my system, how to make it sustainable. And to do so, there is some components that could simplify that. For instance, today, many banks are thinking about migrating to ISO 20022, because this kind of protocol is more flexible, give access to new functionalities, or at least will simplify the way you will communicate with third parties in the future, and also because it's better standardized and it will bring more interoperability locally but also globally for between banks.
You know, how does Fime really help the banks overcome some of these challenges?
So the banks have to make choices which are going to be very strategic, so they need to be well guided and well accompanied. There are three main steps in their project: analysis, design, and validation. So they need to be accompanied by a trusted implementation partner who has much experience in this market. And this is where Fime, with certification testing, consulting, trainings, can provide the best support during all the project.
What are the next steps for the banks?
The next step is to think about the short-term transformation, how to adapt quickly to mobile and to the regulation. And to do so, there is several steps to follow. The first one is analyze. They need to analyze from a technology standpoint, from a usage standpoint, and also from a regulation standpoint, how to deploy processes, systems that will match with what is requested by regulation, or what kind of service they could propose adapted to the mobile. So this is crucial at the beginning to define your own strategy on this point. This is the first step. Then, this is a step 2, design. In fact, you need to define what are your specific needs internally, and also what are your needs based on the regulation. And based on that, you can start to build a system that could be future-proofed. This is the second step. And the third one is to validate it. It's really crucial for banks to think about validating the system based on their own specific needs, to check that it has been implemented correctly, but also to certify the system based on regulation or payment scheme requirements. This is the last steps. And we know that for banks, And for a large organization, it's not always easy to adapt quickly to this kind of change. That's why usually it's often simpler for them to work with an implementation partner that will help them to speed up their transformation. And this is today the role of Fime.